Chapter 7: The Uses of Adversity. When heaven is about to confer a great responsibility on any man, it will exercise his mind with suffering, subject his strength and bones to hard work, expose his body to hunger, put him to poverty, place obstacles in the path of his feet, so as to stimulate his mind, harden his nature, and improve wherever he is incompetent. What does not kill me makes me stronger. Many traditions have a notion of fate, predestination, or divine foreknowledge. Hindus have a folk belief that on the day of birth, God writes the destiny of each child upon his or her forehead. Suppose that on the day your child is born, you are given two gifts: a pair of glasses that allows you to read this forecast, and the pencil that allows you to edit it. Suppose further that the gift comes from God, with full permission to use them as you please. What would you do? You read the list. At age 9, best friend dies of cancer. At 18, graduate high school at top of class. At 20, car accident while driving drunk leads to amputation of left leg. At 24, become single parent. At 29, marries. At 32, publish successful novel. At 30, three divorce, and so on. How painful you would find it to see your child's future suffering writing out before you. What parent could resist the urge to cross off the traumas, to correct the self-inflicted wounds? But be careful with that pencil. Your good intention could make things worse. If Nietzsche is right, that what doesn't kill you makes you stronger, then the complete erasure of serious adversity from your child's future would leave him for weak and underdeveloped. This chapter is about what we might call the adversity hypothesis, which says that people need adversities, setbacks, and perhaps even trauma to reach the highest level of strength, fulfillment, and personal development. Nietzsche dictum can't be literally true, at least not all the time. People who face the real and present threat of their own death, or who witness the violent death of others, sometimes develop post-traumatic stress disorder (PTSD), a debilitating condition that leaves its victim anxious and overreactive. People who suffer from PTSD are changed, sometimes permanently. They panic or crumble more easily than faced with later adversity. Even if we take niche figuratively, which he would have much preferred anyway, 50 years of research on stress shows that stressors are generally bad for people, contributing to depression, anxiety disorder, and heart disease. So let's be cautious about accepting the adversity hypothesis. Let's look at the scientific research to figure out when adversity is beneficial and when it is harmful. The answer is not just adversity within limits. It's much more interesting story, one that reveals how human beings grow and thrive, and how you and your child can best profit from the adversity that surely lies in your future. Post-traumatic growth. Greg's life fell apart on April 8, 1999. On that day, his wife and two children, ages 4 and 7, disappeared. It took Greg 3 days just to find out that they had not died in a car crash. Amy had taken the children and run off with a man she had met in a shopping mall a few weeks earlier. The four of them were now driving around the country and had been spotted in several western states. The private detective Greg hired quickly discovered that the man who had ruined Greg's life earned his living as a con artist and petty criminal. How could this have happened? Greg left job left Greg felt like Job stripped in one day of all he loved most. Unlike Job, he had no explanation for what had befallen him. Greg's old friend of Greg, an old friend of mine, called me to see whether I am a psychologist, whether as a psychologist could offer insight into how his wife had fallen under the influence of such a fraud. The one insight I could offer was that man sounded like a psychopath. Most psychopaths are not violent, although most serial murderers and serial rapists are psychopaths. They are people, mostly men, who have no moral emotions, no attachment systems, and no concerns for others, because they feel no shame, embarrassment, or guilt. They find it easy to manipulate people into giving them money, sex, and trust. I told Craig that if this man was indeed a psychopath, he was incapable of love and would soon tire of Amy and the kids. Greg would probably see his children again soon. 2 months later, Amy returned. The police restored the children to Greg's custody. Greg's panic phase was over, but was but so was his marriage, and Greg began the long and painful process of rebuilding his life. He was now a single parent, living on an assistant professor's salary, and he faced years of legal expenses, fighting Amy over the custody of their children. He had little hope of finishing the book his academic career depended upon, and he worried about his children's mental health and his own. What was he going to do? I visited Greg a few months later. It was a beautiful August evening, and as we sat on his porch, Greg told me about how the crisis had affected him. He was still in pain, but he had learned that many people cared about him and were there to help him. Families from his church were bringing him meals and helping put his childcare. His parents were selling their house in Utah and moving to Crestolo to help him raise the children. Also, Greg said that the experience had radically changed his perspective about what mattered in life. As long as he had his children back, career success was no longer important to him. Greg said he now treated people differently, a change related to his change in values. He found himself reacting to others with much greater sympathy, love, and forgiveness. He just could not get mad at people for little things anymore. And then Greg said something so powerful that I choked up, referring to the often said and moving solo that is at the heart of many operas. He said, "This is my moment to sing the aria. I don't want to have this chance. But it is here now, and what am I going to do about it? Am I going to raise to the occasion? To have framed things in such a way show that he has already risen. With the help of family, friends, and deep religious faith, Greg rebuilt his life, finished his book, and 2 years later found a better job. When I spoke to him recently, he told me he still feels wounded by what happened, but he also said that many of the positive changes had endured, and that he now experiences more joy from each day with his children than he did before the crisis. Before decades, research in health psychology focused on stress and its damaging effect. A major concern in the research literature has always been resilience, the ways people cope with adversity, fend off damage, and bounce back to normal functioning. But it is but it's only in the last 15 years that researchers have gone beyond resilience and begun to focus on the benefits of severe stress. These benefits are sometimes referred to as collective as post-traumatic growth. In direct contrast to post-traumatic stress disorder, researchers have now studied people facing many kinds of adversities, including cancer, heart disease, HIV, rape, assault, paralysis, infertility, house fires, plane crashes, and earthquakes. Researchers have studied how people cope with the loss of their strongest attachment: children, spouses, or partners, and parents. This large body of research shows that although trauma, crises, and tragedies come in a thousand forms, people benefit from them in three primary ways. The same comes with Craig talked about. The first benefit is that rising to a challenge reveals your hidden abilities, and seeing these abilities change your self-concept. None of us what we are really capable of enduring. You might say to yourself, I would die if I lost X, or I could never survive what Y is going through. Yet these are the statements spun out of thin air by the writer. If you did lose X or find yourself in the same position as Y, your heart would not stop it. You would respond to the world as you found it, and most of these responses would be automatic. People sometimes say they are numb or on autopilot after a terrible loss or trauma. Consciousness is severely altered, yet somehow the people keeps moving. Over the next few weeks, some degree of normalcy returned as one struggles to make sense of the loss of one's altered circumstances. What does not kill you makes you, by, by definitions, a survivor, about whom people then say, I could never survive what Y is going through. One of the most common lessons people draw from bereavement or trauma is that they are much stronger than they realized, and this new appreciation of their strength then given them confidence to face future challenges. And they are not just confabulating a silver lining to wrap around a dark cloud. People who have suffered through battle, rape, concentration camp, and traumatic personal losses often seem to be inoculated against the future stress. They recover more quickly, in part because they know they can cope. Religious leaders have often pointed to exactly this benefit of suffering. As Paul said in his letter to the Romans, suffering produces endurance, and endurance produces character, and character produces hope. More recently, the Dalai Lama said, the person who has had more experience of hardship can stand more firmly in the face of problems than the person who has never experienced suffering. From this angle, then some suffering can be a good lesson for life. The second class of benefit concerns relationship. Adversity is a filter. When a person is diagnosed with a cancer or a couple lost a child, some friends and family members rise to the occasion and look for any way they can express support or to be helpful. Others turn away, perhaps unsure of what to say or unable to overcome their own discomfort with the situation. But adversity does not separate the fair weather friends from the true. It strengthens relationship and it opens people's heart to one another. We often develop love for those we care for, and we usually feel love and gratitude towards those who cared for us in our time of need. In a large study of bereavement, Susan Northern Okishima and her colleagues at Stanford University found that one of the most common effects of losing a loved one was that the bereaved had a greater appreciation of and tolerance of the other people in his life or her life. A woman in the study whose partner had died of cancer explained, the loss enhanced my relationship with other people because I realized that time is so important. and you can waste so much effort on a small, insignificant events or feeling. Like Greg, this deep woman found herself relating to others in more loving and less petty way. Trauma seems to shut off the motivation to play Machiavellian tit for tat with emphasis on the promotion and competition. This change in a way of relating points to the third common benefit. Trauma changes priority and philosophy towards the present. Live each day to the fullest and towards other people. We have all heard stories about rich and powerful people who had a moral conversation when faced with death. In 1993, I saw one of the grandest such stories written in a rock outside the Indian city of Bhubaneswar, where I spent 3 months studying the culture and morality. King Ashoka, after assuming control of Maurya Empire in central India around 272 BCE, set out to expand his territory by conquest. He was successful, subduing by slaughter many of the peoples and kingdoms around him. But after a particular bloody victory over the Kalinga people near what is now Bhubaneswar, he was seized with horror and remorse. He converted to Buddhism, renounced all further conquest by violence, and devoted his life to creating a kingdom based on justice and respect of dharma, the cosmic law of Hinduism and Buddhism. He wrote out his vision of a just society and his rule for virtuous behavior, and had these edicts carved into rocks wall throughout his kingdom. He sent emissaries as far away as Greece to spread his vision of peace, virtue, and religious tolerance. Ashoka's conversion was caused by victory, not adversity. Yet people are often traumatized, as modern research on soldiers indicates, by killing as well as by facing the threat of death. Like so many experienced post-traumatic growth, Ashoka underwent a profound transformation. In his edict, he described himself as having become more some forging, compassionate, and tolerant of those who differed with him.